Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have two very special guests. One is a returning guest, and one is a first time guest, and they published a book in September 2025. If you're watching this on X, Rumble, or Rockfin, you'll see the cover of the book, and the full title is The Chris Washburn Story Out of Bounds From Broken NBA Dreams to Redemption. And it's with Chris Washburn, who is a former NBA player. And the returning guest is Ron Chepesiuk. It's Chepesiuk. And we've done great shows in the past. He has great books. He's a very prolific author. So this is probably one of 20 of his books. But we covered, I think our first show was Black Caesar, The Rise and Disappearance of Frank Matthews. Really interesting story. We also covered The Real Mr. Big, how a Colombian refugee became the United Kingdom's most notorious cocaine kingpin. And there's actually a new documentary about that story that's, I believe, on Apple Cinema, but we can talk about that, or Ron can talk about that. Yeah, we also covered Crazy Charlie, revolutionary or neo-Nazi, to Periiso Blanco, the saga of Carlos Later, which is another really wild story. But today we're going to talk about the story of Chris Washburn, and he was a great college and NBA player, and we'll get into the details. There's a lot that he talks about in this industry that I think are very relevant to the current kind of college and professional sports. So I'm glad to have both of you. So Ron and Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, William. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So for people who may not have heard you or earlier shows, Ron, maybe you can start off and then talk about how this project got started, this book, and then what led you to publish this in September 2025.
Okay. We have a mutual friend, GL Henderson, and GL called me one day, and we were talking, and he mentioned that he had a friend named Chris Washburn. If he asked if I remember him, because Chris played in the mid 1980s in the ACC, Athletic Coast Conference, for North Carolina State University. And I said, yeah. I said, I'm a big basketball fan. And I said, yeah, I remember him. And he goes, I said, well, he's sort of looking for an author on a book on that. And I said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm between books now. And I said, I have some time. And I said, I'd be willing to talk to him. So we arranged a meeting at this restaurant in Charlotte. It was sort of equidistance between Chris's place in Hickory and my place in Rock Hill. And we talked, and I got to like Chris, and I told him what I could do for the book. I told him, financial reward that we can expect. I said, don't go and get your hopes up high. I said, because it takes a lot of books to make some money off of it. And so then we decided that we would sign a contract, and we ended up signing the contract. And Hickory is only like about an hour and a half from where I live. I live in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is a sort of a suburb of Charlotte. And so I started to go down there, and then we decided we'd do a Zoom. We did about 40 or 50 Zoom meetings, and talking about Chris's life from A to Z. And I put the book together as I was researching it with Chris. And then I got to talk to a lot of his former teammates. They were, people that I remember, guys like Spud Webb, Derek Wittenberg, Chucky Brown, and they all had some really good input into the book. And so the book came out. It wasn't really a tough project to write. Chris is real articulate, and he remembers a lot of things about his past. And there was a lot of information out there that I could use. And so we got the book out, and here we are.
Good. Congratulations. So
yeah, thank you.
What made you feel like you wanted to tell your story, Chris?
Well, over the years, a lot of folks have told my story, and, I've listened to it. Some things were correct in their statements, but a lot of things were wrong. So I guess I was at the age now when I had also the time, and then again, I just wanted to correct some of the things that were wrong out there. And so, like I said, the best way to get out there was to tell my own story.
And it's an interesting story. You were one of those people who grew early. So you looked older than your age with great athletic stuff. Can you talk about what it's like in that environment where you're bigger than everybody else? Maybe people might think you're older, right?
Well, a lot of times they did think I was. I had a big growth spurt between my 6th grade and 7th grade year. I went from 6 foot to 6'7", in a span of 3 months. But like I said, again, the actual, and then again, like I said, I was still about 260, 270 growing up. When I got to high school, I was about 255. Now, again, I had the body of a grown man. But if you actually looked at my face, I looked like a little kid, had no hair on my face. Almost looked like a big cartoon character, big body, little head. You know what I'm saying? So again, I could be still considered as a kid, but the size I was, it made it hard for me to play with guys my own age when I was growing up, because a lot of times, we were doing things at that age where it was okay to be a smaller kid, but when people saw me doing it, they was like, "Why is that grown kid out there playing with those little boys?" You know what I'm saying? And so, after so long of hearing that, you just stop playing. You know what I'm saying? So my play then went to basketball or doing the things the older kids were doing, where my body kind of fitted in, with I guess with the age I was supposed to be in, but my mind and my actual age, I was 14, 15, hanging out with the guys 25, 26 years old. So my mindset was not like theirs. And so at that age, they also taught me little things that I didn't need to know about how to steal, little things when we would go on the roads and things like that, where they should have been kind of sheltering me. They treated me as one of them, not knowing that, well, maybe on down the road, this kid might become something. So let's protect him more. I never had that protection. So I was always, like I said, I was always in a position where I had to, at least act older than what I was.
Right.
Ron's the hot. Ron gets all the calls you see.
Yeah, Ron's popular.
I don't get any calls during the day, and all of a sudden I get them.
Once you're doing an interview, they all start calling. Hey, are you on live? But yeah, that's a challenge though, and you're kind of elevated into an adult's world. I think that might be a common theme for athletes, kind of like you, is where you're elevated into this world of money and fame, and people are looking at you as, kind of something of value. They want you to go to their school or their high school or their college or something like that. And it's extraordinary how much money was thrown your way, even back at that time, right? Like you were in high school, what, in the 80s or something like that?
Yes, sir. From 1980 to 84.
Right. And so when do you think that the real kind of talent scouts kind of keyed into your talent?
Well, see, back then, what we had back then was a lot different than what the kids have now. We had actual basketball camps where you went and learned fundamentals. Then, then all the kids across the country got together. And then, like I said, they would put you on different squads together, made you interact with guys you never played with. Now they have these days the AAU, and these are organized teams put together a lot of times within their own city or own communities, where have a lot of guys can play together, but then you go play other teams, but you don't get that fundamental instilled in you. So now you have big men wanting to always shoot 3-pointers. Now you have guards wanting to go down and post up, where it's just the game has totally changed. Not to say that the game is still not interesting, and the game then evolves to something even better, because a lot of these kids are very, very athletic. Where when I came into the league at 20 years old, I was going up against guys like, Kareem, Dr. J, and all these guys, which were in their mid-30s. See, when I was going into the league, totally different than now. A lot of those guys were in their 30s. They were grown men. Now, when you look at the league now, a lot of these guys should still be in college. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these guys have been on teams 3 or 4 years that are still college age. So the game looks totally different now. But again, not to complain about it or anything like that. You have to, at this age now, be able to do what these guys are doing. And I commend that. But like I said, I think a lot of these guys are actually missing the actual fundamentals of basketball.
Interesting. But do you feel like you were selected to go to certain colleges? I mean, from reading the intro or the first chapters of your book, it sounds like you're getting a lot of letters. Like you were getting hundreds of letters with sometimes with a lot of money in them, right?
Well, I back then, yeah, it was fun to get those letters. Yeah, and I was getting them from all across all across the United States. But if I knew then what I know now, I could have really went anywhere, because if you're going to be good, or if you're good, the league is going to find you. If they can find guys deep in Sudan, Africa, they're going to find you right here in the United States. And not to say that I wouldn't have went to NC State, but I may have given some other schools some opportunities. You know what I'm saying? Some small schools like the A&Ts, some HBCU schools, and things like that, where I didn't have as much pressure to be, to have to stand out, in those schools, and then also to kind of be, around familiar attitudes and lingo, to say, because when I went to NC State, I had to evolve into that person in NC State, because I had just left an all black high school, and we say different things to each other, and go about it. But then once you hear the other folks say it, now you get different attitudes. So I had to kind of evolve into a different person, to say, when I went to NC State. But again, I wouldn't change anything, because NC State put me on a platform. See, back then, the smaller schools didn't have the platform like an ACC or a Big East have. Now you seeing the HBCU schools on TVs, as well as some of the Division schools, Division II schools on TV. My main thing was, back then, didn't matter where it was, I just wanted to be on TV. And like I said, luckily it played out the way it did, where I ended up at NC State, because them following right after the national championship that year, I would have had a lot of TV exposure. But unfortunately, I got suspended that year, my freshman year. But my sophomore year, again, we still had a lot of TV exposure as well.
Right, and that's under Jimmy Valvano, right? So that was kind of like the famous end of the national champion. I still think they show that clip all the time. So you were a player under Valvano, is that correct?
I was.
What was that like coming into college after him winning, and was it NC State winning the national championship? It
was different for me being a player, because back then my attitude was a little different, because I felt as though I was kind of a star player. My name was out there, and I was pretty well known. And Coach V name was out there, he was like that rock star, whenever he went somewhere, he had to have security and things like that off campus and stuff like that, especially when we went to other schools. So I always felt like I was competing with Coach V, but I never won that competition, because Coach V was just, he had just a different aura about him. You know what I'm saying? He had just different words he could say. And then again, he can inspire you, where, he could say things just to make me get excited. But then also playing up under Coach V, you had to play up under Coach V. Now, again, if you couldn't play, he could make life hard for you. He had guys transfer. He had guys on the bench that, we would call whooping boys, because anything needed to be done, the extra laps needed to be ran, they would be the ones that he would pick out to do them. You know what I'm saying? So again, if you came in with that same game mentality that you had in high school when he was trying to recruit you, you know what I'm saying? Once you got to the college, any of that kind of fell off. Coach, we didn't have a lot of time to work with you. Now again, Coach Reed never worked with us as far as outside of big man drills and things like that, because he was the head coach. I had another coach, Ray Martin, that taught the big man drills. Another coach named Ed Martin that did some other drills. You know what I'm saying? Coach V and Coach Roberto Marco came in with the plays. Now again, like I say, as long as you handled your part, your responsibility, your job, as we said, you had you wouldn't even see Coach V most of the time. But if you didn't, and you started seeing Coach V around, like, some things were getting ready to change.
Wow, amazing. Is there anything you'd like to add, Ron? Do you want to ask Chris a question about that time right now?
Yeah, well, Chris was like one of the top 3 players in the country when he was ready to go to college, right, Chris? You were an All-American. You really had a promising future ahead of you. On that, why don't you tell him about how you picked North Carolina State?
Oh, well, I mean, that's known as editorial. I think it's going to be in the book as well. But I'd been recruited since, hard since my ninth grade. And so, ninth grade, 10th, 11th. So come my senior year, I really wanted to play. I didn't want to see coaches a lot. I don't want to have to dodge college coaches coming in, after games. They talk to the coach, and then the coach calls me in, and they want to sit down for another hour-long conversation after I've just played a game and stuff. And I've done that for, like I said, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. So my senior year, I wanted to just actually play basketball and enjoy my senior year. So I told my mom that summer that, I'm getting tired of all this recruiting. So the next school that comes through that door, because at this time, it was open where coaches could come to your house at this time and try to recruit you. So when I looked out my door, I was on a long street, but there was even more cars on the street waiting to come in. So I told my mom, I'm not going to do this all day. But the next person that comes through that door, I'm going to sign with. I don't know who it is, but the next person that comes through the door is who I'm going to sign with. And by chance, it was Coach Alberto Marco, which had just left Virginia Tech as their head assistant coach and came on to NC State. So when Alberto Marco came in, it was like, oh, I'm going to, I guess, Virginia Tech. But then again, he had already switched schools. He was at NC State. And then Coach Balbano came in. So I was like, oh, it's NC State. So when I came out, I told them they didn't have to give me the whole spiel or anything like that. I'm signing with you. Give me the letter of intent. I signed the letter of intent. And I went back in my room. I didn't have a conversation with them or anything like that. I was just tired of the recruiting part. Funny thing is, the next big school that was recruiting me was Virginia Tech, and they were coming in next. The school Alberto Marco had just left. So when NC State had the letter of intent, when they came out, I could hear him tell them, there's no use to going in, and now he's already signed. You know what I'm saying? They were high-fiving and all that kind of stuff, them going to their cars. But Virginia Tech still came to the house. And they spoke to my mom at the front door, and they just said, can we just please talk to Chris? We're not going to try to change his mind or anything like that. But while they were talking, I had just gotten a moped, and I snuck out the back door, jumped on the moped, and then I was gone. But a friend of mine was the point guard for Virginia Tech. His name was Al Young. And late on that evening, again, I wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I would still cut. He called me, and I answered the phone. I told him where I was at. And what did he do? He told the coaches where I was at. I was at a hotel. Me and my girlfriend, they got in a room at a hotel not too far from my house. And when I looked outside the door, thinking it was him, it was the coaches from Virginia Tech. Now, again, I never let them in, but they stood out there and probably knocked 2 or 3 hours.
So you came up with very famous basketball players too. So you were kind of, you're kind of like a celebrity, almost a celebrity athlete. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah. And so you have all the benefits. You're known, you're popular, you're in the TV, magazines, whatever it is at that time. And with the intro to the book that Ron writes about is your meeting Len Bias. Can you talk about that?
Well, Len Bias back then, because I'm one of those guys, believe it or not, never watched really a lot of basketball on TV. Doesn't excite me to watch other people play unless I'm playing. So my attention span is real short. But when I went to NC State, I had watched Bias a couple of times, and definitely when Maryland had played Carolina, Len had a back-to-back play where he had dunked one way, and then the next way he stole the ball and then dunked backwards, and that kind of caught my attention because it was all over the TV and stuff, and I was like, ooh, who is this guy here, and then I started watching him a little more, and I started seeing his name and his attention that he was getting was bigger than mine, regardless if I was a freshman or a sophomore at that time. So, like I said, I never met Len because the first year I was suspended, I didn't get to travel to Maryland. And something happened, I guess, when Maryland came to NC State. I didn't go to the game or something, but I never got to meet him. But my sophomore year, because he's now, a college All-American, everyone's talking about it. I have to meet this guy before I play him. One of my things was always felt as though if I meet a person first and get a feel of their size, then that would kind of bring my nervousness down. When I met Len, I was a little taller than him, and he had his clothes on, and I was I'm a little bigger than him as well. But once we got to the arena that night, and we was all in our uniforms, we was on the court. I looked at Lynn again, and Lynn was cut up. He had muscles in different places, and so now I'm looking at him now because I like, well, this guy, he's got my attention not just on the physical part of him now. And then when we started playing, I could see now why he was getting all the attention. So now I'm like, I'm playing against him, but it's just like a lot of the guys when they first played Michael Jordan, I'm playing against him, but I'm kind of idolizing him, I'm idolizing him as well. You know what I'm saying? So we met, like you said, after the game and stuff. They beat us both times. I never beat Maryland. So, but I was still, happy to meet Lynn. And like I said, never thought I would see him again after we played until the night he came to my room. And that story is in the book.
Okay.
Ron, is there any question you'd like to add?
No. Explain this, how you changed your life completely, and you never recovered for 14 years by what happened in your room with Len Bias and his friends that came by your place, and you were studying for exams, of course. So, and then you invited him into the room, and tell us what happened after that.
Well, like I said, when I invited him in the room, and again, we had a mutual friend by the name of CeeLo. Like he said, everyone knew CeeLo on NC State team. A lot of times he would do things for Coach B. If guys need to be ran early in the morning, Coach B might send CeeLo there to wake you up and make sure you got your runs and all that stuff in. But me seeing CeeLo about 3 a.m. wasn't odd, you know what I'm saying? Because knowing him, he was coming to use my phone to call his girlfriend or trying to find somebody or whatever. So it wasn't odd. But when he told me he was, I opened the door for him. He said, "I'll be right back." I just left the door unlocked. I jumped back in the bed. And then when he returned back to the room, he had Lynn Bias. No, I done set up. Now, Lynn, what you doing in town? Forgetting that they had this little game called Bomb Storming, where all the senior athletes or people that had declared to go to the NBA would be in certain little small cities to come play basketball games where they could start now. This is where they could first now start legally getting money because they got paid to play in these games. I didn't go to the game because, again, I was already suspended my freshman year, and I didn't want to bring any additional attention of folks thinking although I was getting money, I didn't want folks thinking I was getting money, doing appearances at those games. So I didn't show up. So when Lynn came by, like I said, when they came in, they had a little glass jar, and they wanted to use my phone. And, as you read the book, you'll see what happened. But like I said, with me being in that room and with Lynn being in that room, now when Lynn left, he left me with a habit. And the habit lasted with me for 14 years before I could break that habit. But also, I have never made it to those classes for those exams or anything like that. I still have not taken my final exam. So right now, I am a sophomore. An incomplete sophomore year. So even if I went back to school now, I'd have to start my whole sophomore year back over. But all that's in the book again. Like I tell a lot of people now, watch the parties that you go into, because for some folks, it might end that night. But for other folks like myself that partake in some things I didn't know about, it lasted for 14 years, and every day wasn't a good day.
How old were you when that happened?
I had just turned 20.
Wow, so that was it. And so you can trace that back to Len Bias. For people who don't know, Len Bias passed away from a cocaine overdose, I think. I can't remember what year it was.
Cocaine overdose. He was Boston Celtics pick in the second pick of the draft after Brad Daugherty, and Chris was third. And I remember Larry Bird just enthusiastic about Len Bias because the Celtics' fortunes had gone down a little bit since their championship years, and they were expecting him to really add to the team and all that. And then the devastating news when he died suddenly.
Yeah, it's true. Like you said, Chris, he was an amazing athlete. There's clips of him online with doing that backward hand dunk, two-handed backward dunk, jumping like
that's what I'm talking about there. That's what I'm talking about.
Incredible. I remember him very well.
But see, you think about Lynn different than I would think about, because I think about it like this. Let's say Lynn would have lived and the roles were reversed and he got banned from the league. And what they had said, well, Chris Washburn might have been the next, next best big man. Like bear him the Shaq and all of that kind of stuff, instead of the stuff that they stayed now, because right now I'm considered an NBA bust because I didn't, play in the league as long as I should have. But again, Lynn never played in the league, but he still gets more credit for never playing in the league and dying than a person that, caught an addiction in the league, didn't fulfill the I guess the promise that the had made to the league, so he's considered a bust. So how do you, I still, like I said, I still fight back and forth with the Lynn situation, because a lot of times folks say, well, that was Lynn's first time. And I definitely know that it wasn't Lynn's first time, but I just never said anything because I didn't want to take anything that the league or the Celtics were going to give Lynn or his family. It wasn't my position to say anything at that time. But over the years now, I just wanted to make sure that it was clear out there, my situation, how I got started.
How pervasive do you think drug use was in college basketball and the NBA at that time?
I don't know about as far as NBA. Now in college, like I said, a lot of the players I played against, even on my team, we all used to smoke weed and drink beer before games. That was the biggest thing, especially in North Carolina. The biggest thing we knew about was weed and beer. Now, the biggest cities, I've seen some of the other cities, like up in Maryland or even down in Wake Forest, guys snorting powder before the games. Even offered me some. I wouldn't call their names out, but that wasn't my thing at that time. My thing was just, like I said, my thing was just weed and beer. But when Lynn offered you something, it was like, I want to be part of your game, a part of your crew. So whatever you offer, I want you to know I'm down with you. So that's the only reason Lynn got as close to me as he did, because I wanted to be a part of his circle.
Yeah, it was an epidemic, really. Cocaine was just becoming really big in the United States. And even at the draft, there were several players that came to the draft stoned, including Chris. Right, Chris?
Yeah, I couldn't wait till the draft was over. Or I couldn't wait to get out of there because I was starting to get paranoid. And then I was also, my high was coming down. So it was time to go to get a restart again. So that's why I say a lot of times I tell people the draft, I never really got to partake or really enjoyed the draft because I was high. I never got to, enjoy the festivities that came with the draft, seeing all the people, that came to see you in the back rooms and things like that. I never got to experience that because I was in an interview with Rick Barry and I was right out the back door. So I never got to experience all the good stuff with it.
And then Chris signed. One of the bad things that happened to Chris, ironically, was getting a lot of money. He signed with the Golden State Warriors for a little over $3 million on that, which gave him the money to support his habit for 3 or 4 years, Chris?
Yeah, even a couple after.
You were spending what, $1,500 a day on drugs.
Yeah, $1,500 a day, sometimes more. But on the weekend, I would get 15,000 out, and on a Friday after practice, I go get 15,000, and then come Monday morning, just as soon as practice was over, depending on if we had a late or early practice, I'd be the first one in the bank because I'm broke at that time. I need some more money. I done spent 15,000 over the weekend.
Wow, that's wild. And you kind of had a difficult relationship with the coach of the Golden State Warriors at that time, right? George Karl?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. George was a little different. And I didn't know that other players had the same kind of experience with him after, before me and after me. But then also our relationship was rocky because Coach Karl went to UNC and I went to UNC. I went to NC State, which are big rivals in the South. That's just like the Michigan State or, Louisville and Kansas, so every time, even in practice, I felt as though, the times he made me run extra or he was just getting on me because just being a rookie, a lot of it stemmed because, I was an NC State player. He is the Carolina player because he would say, he would always talk about NC State and Carolina. And I had to tell him one time that coach, I'm out of college now. I'm in the pros. I don't care about, that college stuff. But then again, it also didn't help that, one of the times I got a treatment, he wanted to go out and have dinner with me. And we went to a restaurant that was, that supported the Warriors back then, about 45 minutes away from the arena. And after a few drinks there, and we ate, and he started talking crazy. I ended up leaving the coach, I told him I was going to the bathroom, and I left back at the restaurant, and I came all the way back to Oakland. So imagine leaving your coach. Imagine leaving your coach at the restaurant. You go back. So the next day at practice, I really don't remember if I practiced or not. I know I ran most of that day, maybe most of that week, but that was one of the things also, we had that kind of relationship where, like I said, I started losing respect for him. He started losing respect for me as well.
And then you guys were playing at the Oakland Coliseum at that time. Is that right?
Correct.
Gotcha. Is there anything you'd like to add, Ron? Do you have any questions?
No. You could probably talk about your failure with rehab. You went 3 times and eventually got banned for life. And talk a little bit about your difficulty with rehab and the fact that you really didn't have much support in terms of trying to beat your habit.
Well, like I said, for me, rehab was different. I went to rehab 14 times, but I failed 15. And then each time I went to rehab, you got to remember, each time I went to rehab, I went because I was trying to avoid get suspended from the NBA 3 times, or I was trying to avoid some court stuff. Judge told me I needed to go. So that means each time I went to rehab, somebody else raised my hand for me. I never raised my hand. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until the end where I lost everything. You know what I'm saying? My dad had just passed. I could reach in my pocket. There wasn't nothing in there. I had to start making some changes. I had 4 kids at this time. So again, I wasn't productive in any way. And then, like I said, when my dad passed, it was just me and my mom at this time. So somebody had to start taking care of my mom, doing things around the house. And I just made a decision to stop using. Now in doing that, I had to separate myself from people I call so-called friends, because it's hard to get clean when 2 of y'all trying to do it instead of just one. So I had to separate myself for a little while. I had to start finding new people and new circles to hang with, if not just hang by myself. And then, and I did that maybe a year or 2. And then after I felt comfortable enough to start going back around some people, because it seemed like the only ones I actually knew were the ones that were in those projects, you know what I'm saying? Because I'd been hanging in projects for almost 14 years. So everybody I knew was somehow affiliated with that. So now I had to go out and represent myself to the people that had never been into the projects to stay. I had to start talking to old friends that own businesses or managers and companies and things like that, and try to start back relationships with them. But then also in doing that, I just made sure that I didn't touch, cocaine again, because cocaine is the only thing that has ever broke me. But again, not to say that it didn't come back into play in my mind, because it's always, it comes back into my play in my mind still to this day. It always tells you, man, Chris, you got 24 years clean. Well, you go out there and celebrate and enjoy yourself. Don't get you just one rock. One rock ain't gonna hurt you. You know what I'm saying? This is still in my mind to these days. And it's like, well, but what I do now is run this program called TAC, which is Thoughts, Action, Consequences. Because now what I do is I run the whole tape through. Okay, if I go with this one rock and hit it, the one is going to turn into another 100. Then 100 is going to turn into maybe 1,000 for that night. Now I'm back out there. Now I'm a jewelry. I'm gonna start pawning jewelry and selling cards. Now I'm gonna start losing respect from friends and all this kind of stuff. So is it worth it now? So my consequence is no, it's not worth it. So I don't do it now. But before I did that, I would always react, before thinking. And so now, like I said, being a little older now, knowing that, there's some things in the world 7 foot I just can't conquer. You know what I'm saying? And one might be cocaine. I'm willing now at this age and this time of day to just step back and say, I surrender. You know what I'm saying? I give up. I'm not going to try to fight you no more. Some things you just can't beat up, and that's one I can't beat up, and I know that at this point in time. So I just try to get under folks that are going through those same situations or in that same situation, not to understand that this is a monster you can't beat unless you just leave it alone. And that's the main thing. That's my main message now, and also to think about something before you act, because as soon as you act, the consequences are going to come soon follow.
And you can't really you have to realize how difficult it was for for Chris. I mean, he was eating out of garbage cans. He was stealing money from people. His mother had to hide her purse in the church. And it
I was a
disappeared.
full-fledged addict. I was an addict. I was definitely an addict, and so again, in all senses. So, like I said, when a person tells me, "Man, I just can't stop," that pisses me off more than anything, because the easiest way to stop is just don't pick it up.
Right. I mean, you ended up doing crack on an airplane. In the washroom. That's how bad off you were, and you tried to rehab yourself. You went overseas. 6 different countries, and you ended up doing more dope than playing basketball, right?
Definitely. And I mean, not just in the not just in the bathrooms. I was going to court. I would take crack to the courthouse. This is before they started putting metal detectors and things like that up. And before I was called up for my case, I would be in the bathroom in the courthouse smoking crack, knowing that the bailiffs and the police is outside to do it. I'm inside there with a crack pipe and maybe about 4 or 5 rocks. And I'm getting high before I go stand in front of the judge, just to keep my nerves calm, because I know if I come down too fast, now standing in front of the judge, I'll just break out sweating, you know what I'm saying? And I'll just get real jittery or something like that. So I would think that the crack would keep me calm. As long as I can smoke long enough that I can go in front of the judge, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, then get out of his presence so I can go back and get high, I wouldn't be known. So I've done it all. You know what I'm saying? I know I don't knock anyone from doing it. But again, it's still, at this time, it's still a choice, because believe it or not, I went on AI just today and asked AI, how hard is it to stop using crack without going to rehab? 1 to 10. And even AI said it's a 10. Almost impossible. So I patted myself on the back, because I did something that's almost impossible. And again, like I said, so I know it can be done.
Yeah.
Well, congrats. So you're 24 years clean? 24 years clean, is that correct?
24 years clean. 2001 is when I actually started my first year being clean.
Wow, congrats.
Actually, that's the lesson of the book. I mean, anybody can do it, really. If Chris could do it, without any kind of support, anybody can do it, if they applied their minds to it. And usually that sounds like a cliche, but when you have an example like Chris, it's not a cliche.
Wow. What a great story. I'm glad you made it through. Do you feel like the NBA knew of your addiction? And the second question to that was, if they knew about it, do you feel they did anything, or they turned a blind eye? Like, what's your thought about that?
Well, definitely the NBA knew about my addiction, because anytime I had to go in front of the owner of the team or one of the managers, they could tell me where I was at and where I'd been. So they knew the areas I was hanging in, because every team has an FBI guy with them. And so when you have a star athlete or a top athlete on team, especially your top draft choice, running around late at night, being in projects and $180,000 Mercedes, you kind of watching. Now, again, like I said, they told the owners. Now the owners also called me into the office and said, look, we know the areas you're hanging in. You don't need to be in those areas, definitely by yourself. The police don't even go in those areas unless they have backup. But again, I was comfortable. I don't know why. Believe it or not, I wasn't raised that way. I was just comfortable in those areas. And then again, I was actually bringing money into those areas. Now, the way I was bringing it in wasn't the best way. But then also, I wasn't getting robbed, and I didn't get killed in those situations either. But again, like I said, it was just it was a blessing. Now I'm still here to say.
I have one story in the book where the police actually came to the Hawks and told them that there were going to be some kind of raid, and they were sort of alluded to Chris because they knew about it. They had to know about it because Chris was driving, like he said, expensive cars, wearing gold chains, and spending a lot of cash in the projects. And the projects are like one of probably the toughest part of Atlanta, because I lived in Atlanta. I know about it on that then. So it was quite amazing. I mean, he's really lucky. I was watching when I was interviewing him. I would look at him and I say to myself, I can't believe that you survived, what you experienced on that. And he almost didn't, because he got shot. Tell him about that, Chris. When you got shot.
Over the course of time and the years I've been in the drug game, sometimes I had to owe people, I had to get credit. And some of the guys give me credit up to $1,000, $1,500. You know what I'm saying? I'll bring the money back. And that was early on in my addiction. And as the NBA letters left my name, the credit didn't go as high. But when I actually got shot, believe it or not, it was behind $35 worth of crack, which I had the money. I just didn't have it on me. I had, I didn't carry all my money with me, because in hopes that, when I would come home, I might stay instead of getting money and going back. So at this time, I didn't have the money on me, but I told the guy I would bring it back. But the guy he was working for was with him, and he had to make an example, they said, and he wanted to, but so the guy pulled the gun out at first and aimed at my face. But being my size, and I'm standing beside somebody else, and we were getting high in the back, I picked another guy up and put him in front of me. And so everywhere the guy put the gun at, I moved the man to, you know what I'm saying, and to the point where he just aimed the gun down at my foot and shot me in the foot. And then I hobbled off. But the first place he was aimed was at my face, and then he would try to get to my chest. Like I said, I had somebody bear hugged in front of me, and I just kept moving him where he couldn't shoot me. But like I said, even at my size, I left this game 1 year with my life, but also I left with some wounds as well.
Wow. I'm glad you made it. 24 years clean is really an achievement.
Yeah. And, to top it off, he went through all of that, and he spent 3 years in prison in some of the toughest prisons in Texas.
Yeah, everything I did was tough, you know what I'm saying? But again, you know what? I think that everything I went through was because I put myself there, because my life was actually laid out, you know what I'm saying, with the gift that I had. But I didn't take that choice. So everything after that had to be hard. So I guess that I would learn I didn't want to come back to this, because like I said, when I went to prison, like I said, I got out. I only got a violation because I went somewhere to try to play basketball. And then when I came back, I finished up my time. But and just in doing that let me know that prison was something I didn't want to do again. And so again, but so that put that seed in there to maybe start making some changes in my life. But like I said, again, it was still years after that before I even started making the changes to stop going to jail. Thoughts I was having in my head, like I tell Ron, a lot of times when I think things, I think of felonies. I don't think of misdemeanors. So that was one of the things that I had to start, was my mindset started changing.
Gotcha. Gentlemen, we are at the 45-minute mark. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up? You guys can make any final statements or whatever you'd like to add.
Well, we hope people buy the book. There's a big lesson there for anybody that may have a problem with substance abuse, and it's an inspiring story, and it's a true story, and it's miraculous too, because Chris is, and this is no understatement, a survivor.
Chris, anything you'd like? Yeah.
Well, I would like everyone to understand that it's more than just one chance or two chances out there. If you read the book, you see I had multiple chances, and a lot of them I squandered away. But once I got right, I didn't go back. See, a lot of times when we get straight a little while, we feel as though we can revisit those same streets again, and we're not strong enough, and that's where the relapses come in. But my thing is, read the book, see my mistakes, don't make those same mistakes. And then again, you can also get the book from me as well, from CW Enterprises with an S, TAC.com. And again, that's CW Enterprises, TAC.com. And I also have booking engagements on there. As I say, you can get your books as well. And then also I do seminars. So Well, just tap
It'll
in.
be autographed too, right?
They'll definitely be autographed. Yeah, that's now if you get them from Amazon or anywhere else, they're not autographed, but you do get a good book. But if you get them from the CW Enterprises, TAC.com, they will be autographed.
Nice.
Yeah.
And tell me about THC again. You mentioned that earlier. What does that stand for again?
THC means thoughts, action, consequences, because a lot of times I would think of something and immediately act on it, not knowing or thinking about the consequence at the end. So now what I tell kids is, yeah, you can think about anything. You can think crazy. You can do, think about it, anything dumb. But once you take an action on it, you know what I'm saying, good or bad, once you take the action with that thought that you had in your head, I don't care how long the thought has been in your head, but as soon as you take the action on it, the consequence comes immediately. And that's either a good consequence or a bad. So my thing is, before you act, hastily, because 1 second can change your whole life. You know what I'm saying? Think about your choices. You know what I'm saying? So again, TAC, thoughts, action, consequences.
Gotcha. And thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Again, the author is Chris Washburn, Washburn. And the full title of the book is Out of Bounds: From Broken NBA Dreams to Redemption, also with Ron Chepesiuk, Chepesiuk. And I'll put a link to Chris's website, which is cwenterprisesthc.com. So you guys can go directly there, get books there. This book is also available as an audiobook, paperback, hardcover, Kindle. So you can get it in whatever format you like, and a signed copy is probably preferred. So again, thanks so much for your time, guys, and congrats on the book. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Stay there.
Bye-bye.